What's up, y'all? This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, no sugar added. Now, you know this show is created to discuss life topics, to grow, to challenge, to transform your thinking. And today I found let me make sure I get this right. It's Carline Crevecoeur, and she's a retired Haitian American board-certified obstetrician and gynecologist. And after a couple of years of medical service in New York and Pennsylvania, she gave up her career to raise and homeschool her 5 children. So you guys better not tell me y'all can't do this, because she did it, okay? And she talks about her homeschooling journey in her memoir, Pressure Makes Diamonds. From homeschooling to the Ivy League, a parenting story. Oh my gosh. Okay, Dr. Carline. I tried to homeschool my kids. I tried to stay home for like 8 months, and I nearly I almost lost it. So I had to get back to work full time. But it's so nice to meet you. Thank you for being here on Straight Talk. I love having conversations, like real conversations of people who have done some things that I know a lot of people right now are thinking about, right, Dr. Carline? Like a lot of people are
Yes.
thinking this now, especially with after the pandemic and all the stuff that's being taught in schools. It's getting really tricky.
Yes.
So before we get into all that beautifulness, I do want to know more about you. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay. Well, I guess in a nutshell, what you introduced me is that's it. I came to this country at the age of 5. I left my country, Haiti, at the age of 2. I traveled with my parents in the beginning because they were trying to decide where they should live. My father had a
Mhm.
lot of different scholarships. And so, yeah, so I was raised in New York for most of my growing years.
Yeah.
And then eventually, my husband and I, we moved to Pennsylvania, and that's where we settled and raised our own kids. And the education level was not exactly what I wanted. And as being an OBGYN, all the money and the time that I put into
Yeah.
my education, homeschooling was not on my radar. I never even imagined I would do it, let alone be like it or be good at it. But necessity called me to do it because I was not satisfied with the
Mhm.
education system that my kids were receiving in central Pennsylvania.
Right. And that's you're right. I mean, that's really a difficult decision to make, right? And I don't care
Right.
at what um career level somebody's at, because I think it's harder on both ends, right? So if somebody who is struggling paycheck to paycheck can't do it because they have to work, somebody
Right.
who's a doctor has already a career established and has spent a lot of money already on education, so that's
Exactly.
also very hard, right? So I can see it being a very difficult decision. Like I said in the beginning, I mean, my husband's like, you stay home, you be with the kids. I looked at him at 8 months. I said, if you still want a wife, I need to go back to work, is all I'm saying.
And I feel like what you said is so true. It's not for everyone. You have to kind of want to do it.
Right.
And I knew, even though I was working, the times when I was home, I would do some work with my daughter. And I enjoy that. I
Mhm.
enjoy going through it because she was brilliant. My Danielle, she was doing math at a very early age. And so in the morning before I went to work or she went to kindergarten or, we would work together. So I like that. So I
Mhm.
had an inkling that I would like it,
Right.
especially doing it my way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think it just really worked out. And the thing is that it's not an all or nothing. I say
Right.
to the people that want to do it and they're a little afraid, try it, do it. Because when you do something out of love, you'll be surprised and amazed
Yeah.
of how well you might like it. And if you don't, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Say, you know what, this didn't work out. I think you guys are going to go back to school.
Mhm.
We'll try to do this 3 days a week, but there are options out there. It's
Yeah.
not just either go to school or not. And when we moved to State College from the previous place that I homeschool my kids, I lived, there was this dual enrollment where I could enroll them for certain classes and they could take classes with me. So
Mhm.
that was a really good compromise. And I think more schools should offer that, more districts should
Mhm.
offer that.
Mhm. Now, was that good? That must have been great for the kids too, because they had their mom, right?
Right.
Mom is, most of us moms want to make sure our kids get the best, so the best education, that they know exactly, where they're going in life, like that kind of thing. But it's also good for them to socialize, right? So I'm glad that you had an option, at least, to give them that hybrid, right?
I did, but the socialization thing is
Mhm.
such a big misconception in
Great.
a homeschool environment. And we always talk about that. I've been on some other homeschool podcasts where people say, what's the number one question they tell you? How
Yeah.
do you socialize your kids? And the reality is that I think they're actually better socialized only
Mm,
because my kids dealt a lot with adults. And so, especially in college level and everything else, they've always seen these teachers as not their peers, but someone they could talk to, not afraid to. When I was going in school, there was this hierarchy. This is the teacher, and you're afraid to ask questions. You're afraid,
that's true.
you don't know how to approach them. My kids never had that problem. They said, "Oh, the other day I was talking to my, chemistry teacher, and I didn't like one of the things that he said, like, and they just felt it was natural."
That's
And
good.
because of the fact that in homeschooling, you're dealing with a lot of, sometimes there's like homeschool communities where it's almost like in the olden days where they had, like the black schoolhouses where they had different age of kids in a classroom. Well, my kids kind of experienced that because they were usually the youngest in their classroom because we mixed and matched and we did a lot of different things that they kind of felt comfortable relating to different people, different kids at different age group. And in reality, especially once you leave the structure of a school, public school education, or even any education, everything is according to your age and grade. But in reality, in real life, when you're working as a doctor or as a resident or any occupation, there's mixtures of ages.
Yeah.
And when I was the chief resident, my last year of residency, I had a lot of older people that I had to, I was in charge of because I
Right.
was the chief resident.
Right.
And that was a little intimidating. The people that already had different careers and left their careers to come to medical school, now I was in charge of them. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this woman could be my mom, like this
Right.
woman. And so it was very intimidating where homeschoolers don't really have that problem because they've been used to dealing with so many different people on so many different levels.
So
And I always tell people that unless you live really in a cave, the socialization is going to happen either in sports, either in your neighborhood.
yeah. Yeah.
You socialize. So that the socialization thing, I think a lot of homeschoolers are trying to put that to bed
I'm glad. No, no,
because
you just educated me. Thank you, Carlene. You really did. You just educated me because that's something that I've always heard too, right? And that was one of the things I was worried about when when I even tried to attempt to do something, right? And my kids, at least my youngest, he's 28, and he and his future wife want to homeschool. They do not want their children in this system, right? And that's one of the things that even we talked about, like, okay, so how do you socialize them? You got to put them in sports. You're going to make sure that when you're in church that they go to Sunday school, like that kind of stuff, to just make sure that. But that is such a beautiful way to look at it, and so true, Carlene, because I think that's one of the things that's kind of broken in our system, right? Is that they think every kid at that age is at the same level, and then the next age at the same level, and that's not the case. And I think that's why a lot of kids get pulled behind, because they're not there. Like my daughter, for instance, when she was going into kindergarten, I left her back another year in kindergarten. She just was not quite catching up. And
yeah,
then the second year in kindergarten, then she flew through school without a problem.
yeah.
But she needed that extra. So I get that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I talk about Malcolm Gladwell's book a lot about where he talks about every 3 months. And when you have a baby, a newborn, you see the difference between
Mhm.
those that are born in January and those that are born in December or even September. And those 3 months makes a big difference
Yeah.
in the stage that a child could be. But yet they're all put in the same
So
class,
true.
and it's not really fair because a lot of the January babies do have an advantage over the
Yeah.
December babies, but yeah,
Yeah.
in that same year. So
Yeah.
that's really true. And another thing that I put out in my book is that my kids are different personalities, and I think sometimes people homeschool for a variety of reasons. Maybe their kids don't want to be with other kids, or maybe they do better on their own. So it's not the homeschooling per se, it's the
Mhm.
personality of your child.
Mhm.
And so where I was feeling like the whole socialization thing, my oldest complained that she didn't have a lot of friends, but I don't think, and then my youngest has a lot of friends. So I said, it's not me, it's not homeschooling, it's personality. And we have to
Right.
take that into consideration because our
Yeah.
kids are
Yeah.
so different.
Yeah, and I think that that is such a fantastic point and something that I think most people who are ignorant to the homeschooling don't realize that, right? We're just so
Mhm.
used to this methodical way of doing things that I don't think I've even thought of that, but that's such a great way to look at it. So let me ask you this. That first day when you realized my kids aren't going to school today, what was that like? Were you a little bit scared? I mean, I think I would be really freaking out.
The first day that I did it, I was excited, but the days leading up to that, I was petrified. When I had to actually give in my papers, because the state of Pennsylvania, you have to declare that you're going to homeschool your kids. You have to
Okay.
have an affidavit. You have to have it, co-signed. And I mean, so when that was all done and I had to hand it in, part of me is saying, do you really want to do this?
Right, right. What are you doing?
You really do this. And I have to say that my husband was very enthusiastic about it, but my kids are the one that really gave me confidence because they were to the point where my
Oh,
two oldest, they did not want to go to school anymore. And when I told them that mom's going to be your teacher from now on, mom's going to homeschool you, they got on the bed and they started jumping up and down. I think my
that's
daughter was about 5
awesome.
or 6, and they were so happy that they made me feel happy. They made
Mm,
me feel that I could do this. But
that's
it was
awesome.
it is scary. It is because especially I think maybe nowadays might be a little bit more scary because
Yeah,
when you look back to all the homeschooling things and the books and the do's and don'ts, I didn't have that. And in a way, maybe it's for the best
yeah,
because there was no right way to homeschool. It was just something that I wanted to do for my kids. It was an out of the box experiment, and I contacted different groups. But now there's just too much. When there's a bit, I wish I had a little bit more when I was trying to find the textbooks and everything for my kids. But I think now we've gone the other extreme where there's
yeah.
just so many information out there.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what happens, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think with anything, there always is this sense of wanting to control, even in your own home,
yeah.
right? So they control the school and they control your home. It's so funny we're talking about education in schools and stuff because my husband was just reading an article of I forgot where he said the state is, but in a state where they're well, it's going all over the country, but in this particular state, this woman asked for her daughter's document. It was a one-page document and they charged her $1,900 or something like that for her to take to get the document. And she's like,
Oh,
"Excuse me?" But then they started uncovering and investigating, and a lot of these schools are now charging up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for documents for your kid. And I'm like, talk about discouraging a parent,
that
right?
that is, but you know what? Now I'm on the other side because I'm one of the newest members of the school board in our
Right.
district, and I feel like there are certain groups that are purposely trying to create this extra work for us and
Mm,
saying we want this document, we want because by law they're allowed to get that.
right.
It just puts a lot of strain on us. And so I believe that we do send them the papers that they need, and I really don't know, and that's something I'll find out how much we charge if we charge
Yeah.
at all. But I would think that that's probably trying to discourage people to do if you need papers, especially if you're moving from one school district to the other. I get that, but if you're just doing that just to put a
Pressure on
rent
the schools.
exactly, then that's not right.
There's always a reason for something, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, unfortunately.
So now you homeschooled all, you said 5 children, right?
Yes.
And so did you started with the first 2 when they were little or when they were already in middle school, or how old were they?
Danielle was 6, Mikey was
Oh, they were
5.
little. Okay.
Yeah, they were very little. My twins were just about like 1 or 2 years old.
Oh my
So I had
gosh.
5 under 5 at one point. So,
Wow.
so I think starting that young also made it so fun and easy
Yeah.
because everything was like a game to them. They were learning, but it was fun. And
Yeah.
so when they started taking some AP classes with me and others at school, they were used to that high level of learning, that it's other people saying, wow, you're taking three APs. And today, to them, they felt like it was just another class. It wasn't
Right.
a
Oh,
big,
that's so
yeah.
good. That's
So
so good.
there's a lot of, and I felt like starting that early, being, especially having Black kids, it gave them confidence. Like
Confidence.
they didn't understand all of the racism that occurs, and
That's
even
awesome.
sexism. Like my daughter loved math. In school, she would have probably been told that, I'm surprised you like math. Girls don't like math. Like things like
Right.
that.
Right.
And so
I
they
get
were
that.
able to develop into their own person before they had to deal with all the negativeness that society could instill in your kids.
Yeah.
These some blatant racism and some microaggressions that you don't think cause any harm, but hearing it day in and day out really is disturbing, and
Right.
especially for little kids. So I think in that aspect, I was really happy that I started young.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you did too because you got a chance to grow too, right?
Yes,
I mean, you got a chance to learn what they're supposed to learn at that grade level or whatever. And so that must have helped you a lot too, like being able to grow with them in the process. And then by the time the little ones were going through it, you already had that curriculum, I would assume, right? When
exactly.
you went through, yeah, that's really fantastic. Now, I know you've been through some stuff yourself, right? I was reading a little bit of your bio, and you also had like a cancer diagnosis yourself. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and so how did you handle that? Like, how were you handling was that during homeschooling or before, or
It
how was
was doing homeschooling, and I think just two of my kids, well, my three little ones were in middle school, and my older ones were in high school, and I think one had just graduated. So, yeah, so it was really hard. But by then, they kind of were accustomed on how they had to study,
right,
and so two of them decided to go back to school in middle school. One of them, and then two of the others decided that I would still homeschool them, but on the weeks that I'm not getting chemo.
right,
So I had to prepare all the work for them on my chemo off week, and my chemo week, I was out of it. I was really,
yeah,
and so I couldn't do it that week. And we did well, and we managed, and one of the reasons that I included that, because I really struggled to, because I didn't kind of want it to be a story about me.
right,
But like I tell every homeschool parent, is that we don't have sick days.
right,
We
right,
need to
right,
go on, because we still need to educate our kids. We don't have substitute teachers.
right.
And so I felt that that was important
It
to
is.
add to the story, how you balance the two, and I had told my husband, could you take over? And he said, no. He says, I work full time and I'm not going to come home and homeschool the kids. That was something that, we wanted you to do.
Right, right,
And
right,
so yeah, that was hard. And another part that was a little hard, and I also mentioned that, is that the kids did really well on their own. I mean, they were so well behaved, they were structured, they knew what they had to do. And after a while, I said, do they even need me? Am I redundant?
right.
And I think that's every parent's dream,
Yeah,
to not be needed, to have successful kids that could stand on their own two feet and
right.
could maneuver around their space and in the world. But you always feel like, wow, I'm not needed anymore, So
Right.
it's a bittersweet experience,
Yeah,
because you still want to feel needed. And so when I was going through all my depression and everything else, part of it was like, oh, my kids don't need me anymore.
right, right, of course. Yeah, of course. But you know what? I am, Carlene, I'm actually glad you included that in the story because I have a lot of moms that listen to my show, like female entrepreneurs, mompreneurs, like people transitioning on in different areas of their life. And, but mainly, I think 60% of my audience is women. And the reason I wanted to mention that because I saw that you didn't put it on the top of your list. It's all the way like towards the bottom. But I think it's important, Carlene, because there's people out there who are considering doing what you did, right? And I want them to know that that there are going to be obstacles in life but if you plan it well, you can get through it. How are you, by the way, health wise? Are
I
you
am
well?
doing much better, thank
Oh,
you.
thank goodness. That's amazing. And that must have been scary too, right? So I mean, that's a scary thing. And then you have 5 babies and you're like, if I'm not here, that's
Exactly.
a lot. Yeah,
That
that must have been really scary.
that was very scary. So I had it twice, one in my colon and the other one in my lungs. And the colon
Wow.
one caught me by surprise. And you would think the lung one, because it spread, would not have caught me by surprise. But I think it was even worse because I felt like, okay, I did this, I survived, and now I have it again.
Right.
It was devastating. So I think the second time around was really much worse.
Yeah.
And also the drug was much stronger, so they made me sicker.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then you start, thinking about your own mortality
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Hmm.
what happens to your kids. And I just wanted to see them graduate. And I was like making all these bartering, like, please let me live to see them graduate.
Yeah.
And so my youngest just graduated from college, and
Oh my
just
gosh.
just graduating from high school, that was a lot to me. And now I'm, look, being in that on watching her walk down and being part of the audience. And it was at Harvard a few weeks
Cool.
ago. I just like I never believed I would see this day. And
Right.
so that's my last one. And it was just the emotion of that day was just so overwhelming. And
Yeah.
I cried because I remembered just wanting to live to let them graduate high school. And now I'm seeing my youngest graduate college. So it was,
College. Yes. So good. Now we got to get them grandbabies. You got to watch them
I know.
graduate. That's so awesome. I love it. Okay, Carlene. So if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about what your kids do now? Like, did they all graduated
Right.
or yeah?
Okay.
Can you share a little bit of that?
Okay, sure. Because I got criticized a little bit because where I ended the book was, I believe, 2018. So there's a lot of things that it's not over. And so
Right.
people would write to me and say, I just
People,
want you to end this book like now. We want to know
people to calm down. You can't just write all your life.
exactly. So my oldest Danielle, she's doing her second year at UPenn Medical School.
Oh wow.
She did 3 years of consulting and then changed her mind and then decided to take the MCAT and go to medical school. And she's doing really well. And she's engaged and she's getting married next year. So fingers crossed for grandbabies. Um, my second child, Michael Jr., Mikey, he is doing a PhD in AI, artificial intelligence, at Carnegie Mellon. And it's really unique the way he's looking at how AI is being manipulated depending on who writes the program.
Mm.
And so there's all these things about these facial recognition, and for Black people, it's not really good. And so he's looking to the algorithms
Wow.
that produce biases. And I think it's just really fascinating. All my
Wow,
kids
that
have
is
this.
super fascinating.
It,
I'm gonna have him on here one day. That is really fascinating,
it's
something I never would have thought of. That's
it's
amazing.
yeah, because we think that computers are gonna
Yeah,
be non-biased and everything else.
non-biased. I
But
never thought about the person writing the program.
exactly. So that is
Wow,
amazing. So they interview. So
whole another angle.
he's doing his PhD at Carnegie Mellon. So I live in central Pennsylvania. So my oldest daughter is in Philly, about 3 hours from me, and my son is in Carnegie Mellon, which is another 3 hours from me in the other direction. So at least they're in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
My two sons, who I talk about a lot because they're about a year apart, and there was a lot of civil rivalry between these
I'm
two.
sure, I'm
And you
sure.
see how it carries on, and you wouldn't believe they went to different universities because one did not want to be in the other one's shadow. That was his
Right.
main reason for choosing another university. They're roommates together at Stanford now.
Are they both okay? Are
They're
they
both
okay?
okay. They're doing wonderful.
Coming home with black eyes, that's
So my youngest son, he's one of the twins. He graduated early, and he is doing a PhD in economics. And he has this very social leaning bent, which I love. And so he looks at economics in the view of um, how are we looking at equity in our economic sphere. And every time we talk about different things in education, and I always tell him about the teachers and where teachers should go, and he was telling me about there's different studies that they've had in France, and he goes, I'm going to write an algorithm, I'm going to write a math theorem on that, and so every problem in society, he thinks he could solve it by mathematically.
Wow.
And so when we and I also describe that in the book a little bit, when he was a little kid, I think he was maybe around 7 or 8, and he was watching the swimmers, and he was watching the youngest one, how they dive. And he goes, Mom, I'm thinking that if their angle could be more forward, they could go faster because they'll be further in the water. And he says, I'm gonna write um, a, a math equation about how that could work. And that's what he did. He sat down and he looked at the angle and the cosine. And one of the things I didn't want to correct you about what you should be teaching at a different grade level, it's amazing what the kids will tell you what you should be teaching.
Yeah.
So my kids learned about algebra 2 and everything else. He was a fourth grader when we were learning that. So we did not go according to what society say you should
No, that's
teach your kids.
fantastic. Yeah, you
But
went
they were,
through you went I mean, I just love the way you did this because it just you went through what that child can handle. Like what
yes,
they told you, Mom, I'm
yes,
writing I'm writing a math equation on a dot. I mean, hello, right? But I think you're right. I
exactly.
think, Carlene, that's a really great point because that just shows you how much we may be stifling our children,
Yes,
right? And then they don't think, or that's why they get bored, or
yes,
they, act up in school, or they're not paying attention because maybe
yes.
you're not even stimulating anything at that point.
I agree
That's
100%.
brilliant.
So
That's brilliant.
thanks.
Yeah.
So my other son, Nicholas, who's my little creative son, he's in virtual reality world, and he's working on his master's on that in California. So they're both roommates together, and it was amazing how they both ended up there. So we were so happy. And my youngest, Jackie, she just graduated and she is going to be working in Chicago at a warehouse place, but she's going to be doing systems with computers. And that's relatively new. And she majored in psychology, minored in economics. So it's a marketing field, like these kinds of people, trying to see how you could separate your money with psychologically,
Yeah.
with
Wow.
economics. But she did a lot, her thesis won some awards, and she did a lot of data analysis and everything else in writing her thesis. And she kind of really liked the computer systems added
Mhm.
of it. So that's what she's doing for a year or two, and we'll decide. We'll find out. And
Wow.
what I like about the kids nowadays in this generation is that they don't feel like they have to wear only one hat, you know?
Yeah.
They could be, I always like the Renaissance women idea,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I think that as they watch me, and I didn't mean to do this, I went from being a doctor, a runner in high school, then a doctor, then a homeschool teacher, then school board, then,
Right.
like, your life seems so fulfilled because you don't have to say, well, I didn't go to school for that. I can't learn this. I can't learn that. No, you're an educated person. You're thinking, wow, this is pretty exciting. Let me read on this. Let me see if I could do this. It shouldn't be the first knee-jerk reaction. Well, I didn't go to school for this, so I'm not going to be
Right.
good at it.
Right.
And I feel like this generation is learning that more so than our generation did.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because in those days, we worked in one job for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
But now with employees and employees not giving you all the benefits that you deserve, and employees saying, you know what, I don't need this, I'll pivot. And I
Right.
think this is what the education of the future needs to be,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
broad that the kids could feel that they could pivot, because you never know what you're going to end up doing in your life.
Right. Wow. I mean, this was such a phenomenal conversation. I just love you. I think we need to just put Dr. Carline Crevecoeur's education system. We need to let's just do her. Let's just make a school after you and educate our kids there because it is really like a fantastic way to show people that there's other ways, that it's not just about taking your kid to school and hoping they get an education, but actually being involved. Because
Yes.
if you're a parent that does have to take your kid to school, which most of us did,
Right.
at least be involved with the process, right?
Yeah.
So that way you can help your child to develop. If maybe the school isn't teaching them, I
Hmm.
love the way you did this, Carlene. Like, you let the child also show you how far they can go.
Right.
And then you worked with that. I mean, that's fantastic. That it really, really is. Now, you being in the school board, was that a shocker to you? Was that like, whoa? I mean,
Yeah.
because you taught things so differently, but look at the success rate of your kids,
Yeah.
right? So, is that something you feel like, are you in there to make a difference, to do, to try to challenge the system a little bit, or how are you taking that role?
A little bit. I ran for that school board and I had to do a lot of door knocking. And some of the questions that I received was, you homeschool your kids. What makes you think you could be on the school board? Like, it's opposite. I said, no, the thing is that we all care about education.
Right,
That's the number one thing. And this is why I want to be on the school board. I did raise my kids and I want to give back to my community. I
right,
think I have a lot to offer and I want to be on the school board
I
and give my voice. And also, it's 80%, our community is 80% white.
agree.
And 5% Asian and stuff like that. But yet everybody on our school board is just white. And I thought that we needed to hear diverse voices, and so I thought that was important because there was some things that my kids had told me about as far as when they wanted to take AP classes, it was harder for them. And yet there was shouldn't be, that should not have existed. And I had to go talk to the school in that time. Still this day, and that was like 10, 15 years ago. And now, a lot of the Black students are still complaining about that. And I
Right,
was like, no, that has to change.
it does.
Our voices have to be heard. So I ran for those reasons. But being on the school board, I also realized that there are a lot of things that the school is doing behind the scenes that don't get a lot of um, um, attention.
Exposure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's not easy to just criticize.
Right,
I think some of the criticism are warranted, and I think that they're trying to change things. And I don't think that some criticism is warranted because I think you don't know everything that's involved in the school
right,
board,
right.
and
Unless you're
why
in it, right? You have to be in it to know.
you
Yeah,
do have to be in it. And I feel that a lot of our school board meetings, we have meetings every other Monday. And that's in the summer.
right,
And we don't have a lot of people that show up. They show up for like these hot button issues. But to me, every issue is pretty important. I
right,
would spend
right,
your money. There's transparency there. We can't talk among ourselves because of the sunshine law. There's a lot of things to protect parents that parents don't realize.
don't realize.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think that you need to be engaged either if you're going to homeschool your kids or not, because your taxes still goes to the school
yeah,
district.
yeah.
So you need to be engaged.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think you gave us a lot of education here today. Honestly, one of the most favorite conversations I've had. And I've also like just really learned a lot from you, Carlene. This is going to be super helpful for me and for my family. Like I said to you that, my son is thinking of homeschooling. So I'm definitely going to pick up your book for them to read because I think that's going to educate them, right? So that like we get, also like a perspective of what it means to homeschool, So before I let you go, I want you to let my audience know, like the name of your book, where they can pick it up. If there's other things that they can support you in, whether it's social media or whatever, I'd love to have you give us that info.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been wonderful. Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
The name of my book is Pressure Makes Diamonds: From Homeschooling to the Ivy League, a Parenting Story.
I love it.
And you could pick my book. You could go to my website because I have links to where you could get my book. I don't sell my books, but you could get them on Amazon. If you live in central Pennsylvania, there are some local bookstores that I have on my website that you could pick it up there to support locally. And you could support otherbookshop.org. It's another local distributor. Um, and if you do like my book, and I hope you do, please write a review because that would really help.
Yeah, it
Reviews
does.
help.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate that. And my website is my name, www.carlinecrevacour.com.
Awesome.
Any questions you have, I do read my emails and I do answer everyone. So
That's
feel free to
fantastic.
drop me off.
Is your email on your website as well?
Yeah, that's my website.
Okay.
Yeah. And they could reach me through that.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love you. I love everything you've done. Thank you so, so much for pouring into your kids, because they are now pouring into us in so many different ways in their careers and what they do. So thank you for that. It's a ripple effect. Thank you.
And thank you for what you do, because I
Thank
think
you.
that's pretty amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. And guys, please, please go and support. I will definitely make sure that all of Carlene's information is listed below so that you can go ahead and buy that book. I know I'm going to buy that book because I need it for my babies. So make sure that you go ahead and buy that book, read it, ask her questions, all of that. I mean, this woman is the real deal. I mean, look at what she's doing and look at how she keeps pouring in, right? So she took something that she didn't know about really in the beginning, taught her children, and now is in the board to help transform the way we see things, the way maybe the board sees things, like maybe just enhance what we are already doing. So thank you guys for spending time with us here. I love you guys. Like, share, subscribe, all of that great stuff. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, no sugar added. Until next time.